Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
Welcome, everybody, to the Atlanta Sea Colony live stream. I am Adam Jewell, and with me, as always, is Brendan. Brendan, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. And actually, let me correct you real fast. It's the ASC live stream now.
What did I say?
The Atlanta Sea Colony live stream.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't get the memo.
No, you got the memo. We talked about it earlier this year. You just ignored my memo.
Oh, well, resend the memo.
Yeah, well, we'll just do it live.
Do it live. I gotta say, I never get tired of seeing that intro video. I love watching the 3D model and the tour of it. It's always fun to watch, no matter how many times I've seen it. It's always like just love seeing it.
Well, I'm glad. Anyway, what's been going on with you?
Nothing. I feel like last time we did one of these ones was before Easter.
Yeah.
And yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is fun. Just busy. Kids keep me on my toes.
I will say real fast, for some reason the Facebook feed was jacked up when we first started. There's an error that said it had been deleted. I don't know who deleted it. So I re-added it. We're on Facebook now, but I think that might have screwed some people up. Babe, I see you're here on YouTube, but
I was going to say we could blame Babe, meaning he's not actually here.
Yeah, nope, he's watching. He says he likes the intro. But anyway, it's lots been going on. We'll talk about that a little bit towards the end. But we'll just get right into it and what's going on around these here parts tonight. And as the title talks about, we're going to talk about underwater habitat locations. And I made a little slideshow to go with this so that we've got visual. Ta-da!
That's not a location. That's just a slide. It just says underwater. Oh, okay. Like there's more slides.
Yeah, something like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
But no, it's one of the things where we've and I don't want to put this. I want to leave this as far as viewer interaction as well. I'm going over some stuff on here, and we'll talk about our focuses and stuff like that. But at the same time, I want the people out there to be able to chime in and say, hey, have you thought about this and that? So anyway, quickly, I'll get to here's a location of the past, most of the past and present underwater habitats in the world, and you can see, especially the ones over here on the Western Hemisphere, they've all been clumped together in a general vicinity.
I see Jules.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jules and Aquarius, and there's several others that have been in the Key Largo area. Europe is kind of spread all over. A lot of those were Cousteau's doing. Some of them have been the Hydronaut. There's some in the Black Sea. But yeah, so we've got them spread kind of all over, but not too much on the Pacific side, nothing on the Southeast Asian side. But anyway, I'm not sure why really, and that's kind of one of the things that got me interested in what's a great location for underwater habitat and where should underwater habitats be placed. So there was determining factors in my mind that we've got that they to kind of determine where the ideal spots for underwater habitat's going to be. I think the no-brainer, well, there's a couple no-brainer ones, I guess, but one of them is the water depth, the continental shelf. You don't want to be super deep, but you need to be deep enough that, boats and stuff aren't hitting you, or be in an area, a channel or something like that where there isn't any. So what's an ideal depth for underwater habitat? Need to figure that out. The flora and the fauna, what kind of fish and what kind of plant life is around the coral, fish, all that type of stuff. because if you're going to be in there, you're going to be looking at something. So the external amenities, I guess you could say, how do those factor in there? The weather is a big one. You got Hurricane Alley. You're not going to want to be in there. So like New Orleans probably isn't the best place to be outside there in the Gulf. Probably not the best place to be put in one. And any type of situation like that, if you deal with lots of tidal issues, like really crazy tides, it's probably not going to be great because it's going to affect the internal pressure as the waves rise and lower and stuff along those lines. Above water amenities, like what's around, what's it to do? Because I mean, you're going to come out. What are you going to do that night if you're staying there for a couple of days or something like that, or you want to go out and get something to eat, etc. What is it around? And then especially if you're some of these other ones, what's the local national status? Like, are you in is that habitat off the shore of some nation that may not be all that friendly? Like we saw with Chad and Nadia and what they ended up going to with ocean builders very early on. So that was kind of some of the determining factors that came up. You got any feedback on any of that, Adam?
No, I think you hit everything that I would say as far as, you're making sure you're in the areas with the low risk weather conditions and, making sure you're out of trade routes way too, because obviously you don't want to stick something right where the giant, the cargo ships are going to, because those go down a little bit deeper and we don't want them nicking across it. But
yeah, plus it's it'd be like every once in a while you get this big old shadow going over top of you from a ship or something like that.
It'd be like those people that have a nice house and then they build an airport nearby, or like it's by a railroad where it's like every so often you just have to deal with that noise and just that it's just so inconvenient. But I think you covered all the kind of your guidelines basically of how you'd want to go about doing it.
Yeah. And Baby even chimes in here. He goes, hot and cold, wouldn't want to be under the ice for very long. And that was one of the things that I was kind of interesting about some of those locations where they were in colder water. In colder water too. So it was like, yeah. But I say most of the habitats out there have been for scientific purposes as well. So they kind of get a pass because they're not designed for the everyday person, which is what we're focused on. So yeah, 100%. It's got to be in a tropical environment, in my opinion. Or
unless you were specifically doing it for educational or research purposes,
or it's just a seasonal habitat. It's just there for like the summer months type of thing too. But yeah, that's another big one. And so then after that, I broke it down a little bit more into two different types of water. So freshwater locations, and I broke down the pros and cons of that a little bit as well. And I think it's ironic we're talking about this since about a year ago I was completely adamant against freshwater locations, and you were the big one pushing for lakes and stuff along those lines, and other people were too. And I'm still not pumped on it, and we'll kind of go into that with the
it has to be the right fit, just like
the pros and cons here as well. But anyway, so some of the pros are regulations. A lot of times when you're inland, the regulations of what you're putting in the water aren't going to be as stringent or as difficult as what you're putting offshore, as far as have to deal with, especially in the United States. Some of the regulations are going to get pretty stickler sometimes, as far as what it's made out of, all kind of stuff. But a lot of these inland areas, whether it's quarries or lakes and stuff along those lines, they're going to be managed by local municipalities and stuff along those lines. That'll be friendlier to stuff along those lines. Another pro is was controlled environment, which kind of goes with what Babe was talking there about, as well as far as you don't have a lot of external issues, whether it's boats coming in, waves, crazy waves, weather, all that type of stuff. It's a pretty much controlled environment weather-wise everywhere. So it depends on where you're at, obviously, as far as the weather goes, but you're not going to have massive changes you have to predict or build around. Another one goes back to some of the determining factors is the proximity to cities. most of these, especially if it's lake and stuff like that, they're built next to a touristy location. That's what they're built for. Even quarries and stuff along those lines, they're built around a dive community or a fishing community and stuff along those lines. So there's always usually something to do. It might be a small town, but there's something there usually. The other thing, and we see this with Jules, and we see this with a lot of other stuff, is the ease of surface support. What you're going to have, your generators and stuff like that. Aquarius does a good job of having a floating buoy out there, but it's going to be a whole lot easier, and you can have more redundant life support and energy and stuff like that if you're inland, or even if you're offshore, if you're close enough to the shore to be able to do it. But inland is a whole lot easier. And so then that leaves what other pros are there out there to why would freshwater be a better idea? And since you were big keen on this, I thought maybe you might have some.
Well, and I think to add to it, it's not about it being a better idea. It's a matter of just being an additional
Sure,
idea,
sure. Maybe
really.
not better isn't the best word.
Yeah. And you kind of touched on something that I guess I haven't really thought about. And that's I always think about, obviously me living here in South Dakota, I think of the Black Hills area. They have a lot of nice, pretty lakes that are really clean and all that. And I do know that some people do dive out there just because it is, they are deeper locations and cleaner and all that. Plus your options are pretty limited in South Dakota, but in that region, it is just a bunch of really small towns. It's a big tourist, geographical location, but it's made up of just a lot of small towns. And one of the things I was thinking of is you could almost maybe use that to an advantage, where it's like you said, being able to approach those local bodies of government and being like, hey, we have this thing that would help bring a lot more tourism to your particular small town, or help put your town on the map, being like, hey, our town has an underwater, hotel to it, or an underwater, whatever it may be.
Right.
So, I mean, that, like you said, might be more friendly, more easy to work within a lot of those, working with the government, whether it's, once you get into the oceanic part, then you're talking about more than likely federal stuff and international stuff. So gets trickier.
Yeah.
But the lakes itself, like I said, if you find the right ones in the right locations, I mean, you still have good weather year round, and there's still plenty to be able to look at. Maybe freshwater fish aren't as colorful and all that stuff as tropical fish, but still, something to look at and be entertained by. And,
yeah. You get thinking about the Great Lakes, even though it's going to be a colder water. But when we had that guest on several years ago, he was talking about the shipwrecks up in Lake Michigan, I think it was, and stuff along those lines. So if you put one off of one of those shipwrecks where people can, come down, spend the night, and looking over a shipwreck or something along those lines. So there is. It's obviously a different type of, I think, person that would be more interested in that than say a tropical location. But yeah. And then so some of the cons is the lack of flora and fauna. That's one of growing up, we always had, freshwater fish tanks, and you have to do everything you could to make the fish as pretty as possible, because everything else is like plastic plants in there and stuff like that, because most of your freshwater plants aren't all that pretty. They're not that colorful. And same thing with a lot of the fish. There are some, but it's few and far between. So you're not going to have, and that's why if you have something else like a shipwreck or something else like that to draw that attention to it, you're not going to have that much going on.
Unless you put it in Loch Ness and then maybe catch a glimpse of that monster.
That's true.
That'd be pretty impressive.
Yeah. If we do that, we can only charge $350 for you. The other thing is PR. I think the lack of it, even though you were talking about, with the local municipalities and stuff like that, true, but it's not going to be as sexy. It's not going to draw as many people, I think, to a lake and stuff like those, except for in the local area, than something else like that. And then Yeah, and then others. And we've already got some comments in here.
Lots of zebra mussels in freshwater. And algae in warmer freshwater is a problem. Yeah, I mean, even up here in the local lakes, that's something that gets talked about a lot when the weather changes, and like what Ben was saying, the zebra mussels, like that's a huge like pain in the side of like a lot of like the local government, anyways. Of like, I don't fully grasp the whole thing of what goes on with zebra mussels, but they invasive is what they are. So it's just like a matter of making sure you keep your bodies of water clean of them, because they just are a menace, I guess. But yeah, those are great points.
And it's something else I didn't put on here, but is clarity of water. Often your lake isn't going to be as clear as say ocean and stuff along those lines. But it sometimes, depending on where you're at in the ocean too, it might not be crappy water there as well. But yeah, once again, there are those honey spots of clear water, fresh water in the United States and elsewhere too. I mean, obviously other parts of the world. But that's kind of my give and take on freshwater. That being said, like we've talked before, there are a couple of really good rock quarries that have great diving. One of them we have talked to about putting habitat there. I probably need to readdress it since it's been a couple of years, but he said build it and we're good type of thing. So, yeah. The next, obviously, saltwater, because if it's not fresh, it's going to be salt.
There is no in between.
I mean, there is brackish water, which is a little bit mix of both, but
okay.
The saltwater, like we're talking, it's much more visually appealing, most usually for a saltwater location. Even when I was at Jules, which that's one of the complaints is because it's like in a lagoon, it isn't the best thing. There was fish out there. There was jellyfish. Recently on Jules, I showed there was a shark. So there's manatees. There's a bunch of different variety of marine life.
It was a small shark, by the way.
Well, but still, it was a shark.
I know, but a lot of people think when you hear
a
shark, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to go swimming there if there's sharks." But
yeah, no.
It was a tiny guy. I think you're going to be all right.
Yeah,
we don't want to get people worried about Jules.
The variety of locations where you can have one is going to be vastly different too. When you're looking at lakes or quarries, the surrounding, it's usually dirt or rock sides and stuff along those lines. You don't have cultural differences. You don't have. There's a lot that goes into what makes it a place attractive beyond just the water. I think you get a lot of that when you start looking at saltwater and stuff too. And even though you have this with the freshwater, the saltwater, usually you've got beaches. So you've got, like, for example, like parasailing, or you got fine dining, you've got all those other kind of things that usually come with that, unless you're on like an island, and stuff. But I look at like Key Largo, for example, you've got so many different places to go eat and do stuff, an hour away from Miami. You've got all this kind of stuff going on. Same place with most of these other, Aruba, which was another location, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, all these places we showed there. And even over in Europe, Europe is so small in comparison that each country is almost like a state here in the United States. So you've got tons of stuff really close as well. So in the locations where there have been habitats to this point in time, that has not been an issue. And then obviously, are there any other saltwater, high-level thinking saltwater pros out there that would be a draw for why an underwater habitat should be there? Speaking of, I guess. And if not, we'll just move on to the cons. The first one's weather, because you have to deal with hurricanes unless you're in certain areas. Now I looked up different maps and stuff like that of where the least amount of hurricanes were, and there's like a swash right along, like the equator is like pretty clear of hurricanes for the most part. So the closer you are to the equator, the better that is. I think the farther north you get to, because it's once again, it says that hot air, cold air type of thing that
Yeah.
makes storms anyway. So in the locations where the water is usually about the best, that's usually where it's gonna be the worst. Plus, also, if you do run into a place where you've got like storm swells or like the water because of tides increases quite a bit, then you have to engineer factor that into that because it's going to change your levels because if you drop below over that 1 atmosphere and you're pressurized accordingly, that's going to change things too.
Right.
Regulations, as we talked before, regulations become a tricky situation when you start having to deal with state and federal and who knows what else. We'll spend a lot of time there. And topside surface sport, if it's out further, like Aquarius and like some other ones, you're limited to a buoy and you're quite a ways out. Any kind of rescue or stuff along those lines out too when you start getting further and further out, or lack of infrastructure altogether too.
What are you saying? It's a pro or a con? Because on your slideshow you have it under pro.
Oh, what? No, it's a con. My bad.
I got confused. I'm like, I thought he was going cons. Right
oh
now.
Yeah, there's cons. Yeah, my bad, guys. Sorry about that.
We get it.
All right. Well, yeah. Anyway, any other cons? And what we're talking, Babe's got a lot of things engineered that is needed have already been done in submarines and saltwater. Yeah, I say if it can survive saltwater, it's going to be able to survive freshwater. So it's one of the things where you design it for salt. And if you stick it in fresh, you're good to go either way. But yeah, the corrosive aspect of salt is one of the things that somewhat concerning. But once again, we've got 60 years of underwater habitats that have existed in salt water, so we kind of know what we're doing as a worldwide community of engineering and stuff along those lines. So.
Yeah, and the science is there. We know how to keep things intact. I mean, it's not like in the history of humanity, we haven't built something in the water and figured out how to do it. Like, that part is all figured out. We just have to apply it to our thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I said, and I've said multiple times, and but I think that the actual design of a basic underwater habitat is a lot easier than people tend to think. It's just people want these grandiose, giant, sprawling underwater communities straight off the bat, and that's what makes it so much harder. Is trying to build those versus just building a standard underwater habitat, because all it is a upside down cup shoved in water. You got your air pocket in there. As long as you're keeping good air coming out and the bad going out, I mean, that's pretty much all it is. You built to be able to sustain the pressures from outside, which once again at shallow depths isn't a big deal. So there's really not a lot of engineering that needs to go into it for the most part for very basic necessities of underwater habitat. It's just been usually at that point in time they're ugly. Nobody wants to invest in an ugly piece of tin can underwater type of thing too. So yeah,
that's where we come in.
Yeah. So let's talk about some potential ASC locations. First off is like we talked about the lakes and quarries. We talked a little bit about that's going to probably be, honestly, unless just the right fit comes along with partnering with somebody, probably going to be the first one goes, just because it's a controlled environment where we can test everything and be done with it. There is obviously with the amount of divers, inland divers out there, you look at up north, Midwest, up north, where you're so far away from the ocean, you put something in there so they don't have to go all the way down to Key Largo to Jules or something like that to spend a night in an underwater habitat. There might be that draw. Say we put it in Lake Michigan or something along those lines. Obviously, my preference is Latin America, having lived down there for 6 years. Honduras, Belize, those two locations are close to the second largest coral reef in the world. Tons of beautiful fish, warm water. You've got a lot going for you. So that is my
bueno.
Yes, that's my and good food too. That is my preference, obviously, of anyone's. And then after the last interview I did with Mitchell with ArcPad Philippines, he was just really talking that up too. And as we've seen, there's has really been nothing over in Asia or Southeast Asia. One concern is obviously the political climate. Sometimes over there gets a little hairy, but besides that, it looks like it could be potential for many different ways. And when that video comes out, you'll understand why, because we talk a little bit about that. And actually, we don't go into costs and stuff like that, but off the record, him and me talked about costs of living there and cost of labor and all that kind of stuff. And it's just so much cheaper that it makes a lot of sense on why to go over there. And the same thing with like Latin America as well. Your costs are going to be a whole lot cheaper. Probably not as cheap as the Philippines, but they're going to be a whole lot cheaper in Latin America than they would be here in the United States.
Now that's where the Maldives is at, right?
It's further away, but I mean, you're getting closer. You're a whole lot closer than we are here.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say because Maldives is like you constantly see like as like a top scuba location,
yeah,
like a resort location, all that.
Babe's got some stuff here. It's like, hey, I chased a rabbit hole of looking at quarries for sale in the southern part of the United States. You want to buy the whole quarry? It has potential, but the end result for me is still ocean setting. I would like Brennan's preference place.
He doesn't need to call me out like that, where he's like intentionally saying like, "Oh, I'm siding with Brendan." Thanks, babe.
Anyway, but yeah, no, it is. And that was the whole thing. You know, back years ago, I looked at what would it take to buy a private island, like in the Caribbean or something along those lines, because that'd be ideal. Buy that. Every time I look at buying an area, because my brother-in-law and me have talked about this, about buying land and building your own thing, you're going to sink $1 million into that. I could be sinking that $1 million into a habitat. As long as we have somewhere to put it, which I believe we do, that makes more sense. If you didn't have a place to put it, then yes, building your own so you control the full infrastructure makes a lot more sense too. Babe says, I would love places off of California, but red tape makes it impossible. Hawaii also. Yeah. California, I'd probably avoid. Hawaii would be amazing. And there wasn't there a habitat off the coast of California there for a while? Now that I get thinking about it, I thought there was. But yeah,
but California does. I mean, they obviously nice beaches and stuff, but as far as like diving and stuff, there really isn't a lot like off the coast of California, is there?
Yeah, because usually it's like more surfer waves and stuff like that over there.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's more choppy and all that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, remember this, and we can go back to being big boys there. Anyway, so that was kind of I want to leave it open not only here but down the road for people rewatching this either on the podcast or the video format to put feedback and stuff. Yeah, C Lab 2. I knew it when we were talking about it because you and me had just talked about that, and I thought there was something with California. Of course, I would hope you would know that, babe, after all that work you put into it. So that was basically the whole gist of this is more of a thought experiment of here's what needs to happen. It's kind of like with ASC and the habitat. It has to meet certain criteria. It has to be modular. It has to, be one atmosphere. It has to be surface atmosphere. It has to be designed so that anybody can come and go. And it needs to facilitate that seamless transition from land to ocean. And as long as all those things are met, we're great. And same thing with location. It needs to meet certain criteria, I think, too, which helps narrow down your focus on when you're looking at putting something. Depth, obviously, we didn't really address that, but I think that obviously for the prototype, that one atmosphere area is going to be the what we have to focus on. After that, it gives us a little bit of freedom and leeway to go deeper if we want to. So, anything to add to that, Adam?
Another one that we could do for those people that are super introverted. There's a island, the most remote island in the world. I just learned about this today.
Mm-hmm.
Is
dude, getting stuff out there would be ridiculous.
Bouvet Island or something like that. It's like the most remote island in the world or whatever. I was listening to a show about it. Yeah. And like the closest place is still Antarctica or something like that.
Yeah,
So like,
crazy.
so put it out there off the shore of that, and it's like, so if you really want to be by yourself, that'd be the place to go. And it's really cold.
Yeah, there is that.
Penguins, that'd be pretty cool to see penguins go by your windows and all
I
that.
don't think they would, but
You don't think it would be cool to see that?
I don't think they would. I think you're kind of far out from that too. Still,
No, there's penguins on that island. I looked.
okay.
I looked it up. Okay, that was the research I did
fair
for
enough.
today's show. No, but like you were saying, like from a business aspect, like we've always said, it's we'll build the things, and then wherever you get the customer wants to put them, that's on them. Obviously, we would do our recommendations for it, and we'd probably from a warranty and insurance aspect, you'd have to give guidelines of being like, hey, you probably don't want to put it, like you said, in these certain areas where you're going to have these a higher risk of your hurricanes or your just high traffic areas as far as like boats
Right.
and all that would be going, or just whatever it may be. So but yeah, I mean, I'd say, to me, I feel like there's more opportunities than there is setbacks as far as places you could put it. I mean, I think you could put them just about, I don't want to say just about everywhere, but there are so many places. Like when you had that map up earlier, one of the things too is, I mean, you talked about Southeast Asia and that area, but another place is like, Australia. That's another place that has great scuba. I mean, the Great Barrier Reef and stuff. Tons of, unique marine life there too. So that's another one that, is potential for all that. And also, depending on where at in Australia, is in that same zone you were talking about along the equator, or closer to it, where you could be in a safer zone for, the weather and whatnot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
there's tons of opportunities.
Right. There is. It's always going to get that one built first, and then we can go from there. Anyway, that's all I got on that. I want to go through a couple little updates that have been going on. 3D printing. So I think we finally got all that figured out. I sent the stuff over. We need to get some changes, send it back. So here's the cool thing. I wasn't too keen on it, but he sent it back, and it's like all in parts. It's like you have to assemble it after it gets printed. I was like, ugh. But I got thinking, for shipping it to people, that'd be great. You ship it and they have to put it together. It's like 10 parts.
That, and we love Legos.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty much you just glue all your pieces together and you got underwater habitat type of thing. So I haven't heard back if that's going to work yet. I think it's going to. I don't see why it wouldn't. Because that was the problem, was the size of the print beforehand. Now it's in little tiny pieces. So
how big will it be once it's all printed out and put together?
Let's see.
Because I'm just curious on why it would be in pieces as opposed to, like, how big are you printing it to where it has to be in multiple pieces?
Well, the problem was that since it's a hollow box, I think he wanted like the top off so that it would print easier inside hollow.
Oh, okay.
And stuff along those lines. And then the cradle part, he wanted it separated off. So the guy just built a bunch of different pieces. Yeah. Nice. And so, I mean, I think he can print up to like a 7-inch or 8-inch print. So I don't know how big he's going to go, but I'll be curious. Babe will be the first one to see it, so Babe will have to let us know.
He's going to be sitting there playing with it and not even sharing his toys and all that.
Tomorrow afternoon, I got a Zoom call with a company that hit me up on LinkedIn. They're trying to build, or they have built, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. Floating villas, but they want an underwater aspect of the whole thing. So they hit me up to talk about that, whether they're working together or what they're looking for. I'm not 100% sure, but I got that going on tomorrow afternoon. So that'll be interesting. So Patreon members, you'll be finding out what's going on with that after that call. Adam said something the other day. I meant to talk to him. We can talk about it right now. Were you serious about doing like an ASC after dark?
Well, I think we don't need to have those connotations to it, but I mean, well, because the whole joke came about in the Discord,
right? because of Martin or
because of time zone differences,
Yeah.
really. I mean, if it was like a weekend thing, yeah. I mean, I'm always up super late on a weekend, anyways. Now, I mean, on a weekday, I'm not going to stay up.
Well, yeah, no,
super
it has to be
late,
like a Friday night or something like that.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things where we could test it out one night, anyways, to see how
Sure.
it goes. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't.
Yeah, that would be like really like laid back, just like pizza and stuff along those lines, playing video games or whatever. I don't know.
We needed the ASC logo, and then like in the neon pink that has that cursive like "After Dark" right over it with some saxophones playing. People are like, I don't know what's going on with this live stream, but I don't want to watch.
And speaking of live streams, and the next one in 2 weeks, which is I think it's an open discussion. I may not be here, so I'm working on that. Whether that's going to work out, babe. If you're around, you and Adam may be able to do
to clarify, you're going to be alive.
Yeah. I may be here. I may not. I'm not 100% sure yet. If not, if that doesn't work out, I may just go ahead and air the interview I did with Martin or with Mitchell earlier. So there's that. So, babe, if you're available in 2 weeks, great. If not, we'll make it work too.
Yeah, babe. You can join us for these things.
Yeah, you don't have to just sit out there. You have access to this.
Yeah, you could have gotten in here.
So anyway, and with that being said, I don't have anything else to go over tonight. What you got, Adam?
I got nothing. I can. I'll go through the rundown. If you want me to go. Oh man, now we have folders to put this stuff in. Sorry, the program we use this for had an update, and I was like trying to figure it out there for a second. Yeah. So, you want me to do the rundown?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay. So I got to thinking about this today of a more efficient way of trying to do the rundown, and I'm gonna throw it at you and see. So
I still want us to sit down and just create a video for the rundown. Then we don't have to worry about it each time because it's all the same. We just air it and we're done.
Don't take away like my thing, okay?
I mean, you'll still be doing it.
Well, okay, fine. Anyways, LenacyColony.com. That is step one. That's what we want you guys to do first. So for the first step of being like just the greatest people for Atlanta Sea Colony or ASC, go to our website, LenacyColony.com. Multiple things to do. Go to our not in our resource page, but our contact page, and we have our social medias on there. We have the Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We got YouTube. The links to the Discord. Like we keep saying, join the Discord if you haven't already. Constantly have great talks going on in there. We have a few members that keep the discussion going, like just so Brennan and I don't even have to, which is great. And so that's the second thing. When you're on those social medias, like and share our stuff as much as you can. And just help get the word out about ASC. That is the biggest help right now. And the other thing you can do is you can go over to the merch store that we have there. We have this cool hat. Oh yeah, I can't show it because the way I have my light set up, it like reflects right off it. But I got the Manta Ray ASC hat there, and I love it. So it's a great hat. But all sorts of cool stuff there. Clothing, your cups and tumblers and water bottles and mouse pads and whatever it is, we have it over there, and always a bunch of cool designs. And the last thing you could do that could help us out is, if you're willing, join our Patreon. For our current patrons, we have Brian Acosta, we have Matthew Cathy, Martin Reese, and S. Babe Hyde. So thank you, fellas, for your continuous donations and helping ASC. So yeah, that's all that helps us, and we appreciate all the help that we can get with that. And like Brennan said, 2 more weeks we'll have another live stream with at least myself, and then hopefully, if we're lucky, Babe will bless us with his presence there. But other than that, Brendan, I don't got nothing else for you for the live stream anyways. So
yeah, thank you guys for always tuning in, whether you're listening to this or watching this now or later on the podcast or the VOD, wherever that may be.
Or the pod. Yeah, you said podcast.
I did, yes. So
Yeah. Hit that like and subscribe button.
that's right. Yeah. Just right down.
Smash that button.
Right down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it helps the algorithm and helps us get our name out there. And
Yeah. Put this up the charts.
And toggle the little bell there so you get notifications whenever we post any new stuff.
If you're like me, you're turning off those notifications. You don't need a reminder, but
I know I'm into it and I'll find it.
All right, thanks guys, and we'll see you in 2 more weeks.